The police siren screamed through Willowbrook Estates as Karen Hendricks stood dripping wet beside my pool, her perfectly styled hair plastered to her skull, screaming about property violations and trespassing. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had just inherited something far more powerful than just this house. By the time the handcuffs clicked around her wrists 20 minutes later, Karen's reign of terror over 3 different HOAs was about to come crashing down in the most spectacular way imaginable. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine lawns of Willowbrook Estates as Marcus Chen pulled into the driveway of 847 Maple Ridge Drive. The house stood like a monument to his grandmother's legacy, white colonial with black shutters, immaculate gardens, and the crown jewel, a stunning infinity pool that seemed to pour directly into the horizon. 3 months since Grandma Lily's funeral. 3 months since he'd learned he'd inherited not just her beloved home, but something far more significant that even he didn't fully understand yet. Marcus stepped out of his Honda Civic, immediately feeling underdressed in his jeans and Ukla t-shirt. This neighborhood screamed money, the kind of money that came with rules, regulations, and neighbors who had nothing better to do than police everyone else's business. "Excuse me." The voice cut through the morning air like a buzzsaw. "Excuse me, you." Marcus turned to see a woman marching across the perfectly manicured lawn, her blonde hair bouncing with each aggressive step. She wore a pressed white tennis outfit that probably cost more than his monthly rent back in his old apartment. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, though something in her posture told him this wasn't going to be a pleasant welcome to the neighborhood conversation. "I'm Karen Hendricks, HOA president of Willowbrook Estates." She said it like she expected him to bow. "And you are clearly in violation of multiple community standards." Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Karen gestured dramatically at his car. "Overnight parking of commercial vehicles is strictly prohibited." "That Honda is clearly a rideshare vehicle based on the condition, and it's my car," Marcus interrupted. "And this is my house." "Your house?" Karen's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Young man, I think you're confused. Mrs. Chen lived here, and she passed away months ago. The property is in estate proceedings. I'm Marcus Chen. Lily Chen was my grandmother. I inherited the house." For just a moment, Karen's confident mask slipped. But she recovered quickly, her eyes narrowing as she looked him up and down. "Even if that's true, there are standards in this community. Property maintenance requirements, landscaping guidelines, architectural review board approvals for any modifications." Marcus glanced around the yard. Everything looked perfect to him, better than perfect, actually. What exactly needs to be maintained? "For starters, that pool." Karen pointed toward the backyard with disdain. "It's been uncovered and unattended for weeks. It's a safety hazard and an eyesore. The pool looks fine to me." According to HOA Regulations Section 4.7, all pool installations require ongoing maintenance documentation and seasonal compliance reports. Your grandmother was, let's say, lenient about such things. But I run a tight ship. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Grandma Lily had mentioned Karen in her letters, the woman who'd made her final years miserable with constant complaints and petty violations. "Well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree about that." "This isn't a negotiation," Karen snapped. "You have 72 hours to bring the property into compliance or face daily fines starting at $50 and escalating weekly. And if you refuse..." Karen's smile was pure venom. "Then you'll discover exactly how much power an HOA president has in this state. I've foreclosed on 3 properties in the last 2 years for non-compliance. Don't test me." She turned on her heel and marched back toward her house, a mansion that dwarfed every other property on the street. Marcus watched her go, feeling a familiar knot form in his stomach. He'd dealt with bullies before, but never one with legal authority. Inside the house, Marcus found Grandma Lily's study exactly as she'd left it. Mahogany bookshelves lined the walls, filled with legal texts, real estate documents, and what looked like years' worth of correspondence. A framed law degree from Stanford hung behind the desk, something he'd never known about her. His phone rang. "Marcus. It's David Kim from the law office. How's the move going?" David had been Grandma Lily's attorney for 30 years. Marcus had met him briefly after the funeral, but they'd only discussed the basic inheritance details. Complicated, Marcus said, settling into his grandmother's leather chair. I just had a run-in with the HOA president. Apparently, I'm already in violation of something. David's chuckle was dry. Let me guess, Karen Hendricks. You know her? Oh, I know Karen very well. She made your grandmother's life hell for the last 5 years. Constant complaints, frivolous violations, harassment disguised as community standards enforcement. Marcus felt his anger rising. Why didn't Grandma fight back? Who says she didn't? David's tone shifted, becoming more serious. Marcus, there are some things about your inheritance we need to discuss. Things your grandmother wanted you to discover gradually, but given what you're dealing with. What kind of things? Are you sitting down? Marcus looked around the study, really looked this time. The legal books weren't just decoration. Thick files labeled with subdivision names filled an entire cabinet. Real estate documents covered half the desk. Your grandmother wasn't just a homeowner in Willowbrook Estates, David continued. She was one of the original developers. She owned 40% of the entire subdivision's master deed. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. What does that mean? It means you don't just own a house, Marcus. You own a controlling interest in the entire development. Every HOA decision, every rule change, every fine, they all have to go through the master deed holders for approval. Marcus's mind raced. Does Karen know this? Your grandmother kept it very quiet. But the legal authority is ironclad. You have the power to override any HOA decision, remove board members, even dissolve the entire association if you choose. Why didn't she ever use it? Lily was old school. She believed in community cooperation, thought Karen would eventually come around. But she also knew things were getting worse. That's why she left you detailed instructions. Marcus opened the desk drawers, finding a sealed envelope with his name written in his grandmother's careful handwriting. Inside were dozens of documents, recordings, photographs, legal violations Karen had committed, testimonies from other residents. She documented everything, Marcus whispered. 5 years' worth of harassment, intimidation, and illegal HOA practices. Your grandmother was building a case. Through the study window, Marcus could see Karen's house. She was on her phone, pacing angrily in her front yard, probably already calling lawyers or city officials or whoever she thought could help her crush the new problem in her neighborhood. She had no idea what was coming. Marcus's phone buzzed. With a text from an unknown number, Mr. Chen, this is Patricia Walsh from 823 Elm Court. I heard you inherited Lily's house. Please call me. There are things you need to know about Karen Hendricks. Things she's done to all of us. Then another, Marcus, this is Robert Torres from Maple Ridge. Your grandmother was a saint. Karen destroyed my small business with false complaints to the city. We need to talk. And another, the Chen family has friends in this neighborhood. More than you know. Karen's made enemies of everyone. It's time someone fought back. Marcus stared at his phone as message after message poured in. His grandmother hadn't just left him a house and legal authority, she'd left him an army of neighbors who'd been waiting years for someone with the power to finally stop Karen Hendricks. Outside, a police car pulled up to Karen's house. She gestured wildly toward Marcus's property, clearly filing some kind of complaint. 2 officers nodded politely, took notes, and drove away without ever approaching his door. Karen's face turned red with rage. She stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Marcus pulled out his grandmother's files and began to read. What he found made his blood run cold and his resolve crystallize into something unbreakable. Karen Hendricks had spent 5 years building an empire of fear and control in Willowbrook Estates. She'd driven out families with harassment, manipulated elderly residents into compliance, and used her position to enrich herself through illegal fines and kickbacks from contractors. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd declared war on Lily Chen, a woman who'd spent 40 years as one of the state's most successful real estate attorneys before retiring to this quiet neighborhood. A woman who'd helped write the very laws that governed HOA operations. A woman who'd spent her final 5 years methodically building the legal framework to destroy Karen's reign of terror. Marcus closed the file and reached for his phone. Time to make some calls. Starting with the State Attorney General's office. Karen Hendricks had no idea that her kingdom was about to crumble and that the quiet young man she'd just threatened was holding the keys to her destruction. The war for Willowbrook Estates was about to begin, and Karen had already lost before she even knew the battle had started. Marcus spent the next morning in his grandmother's study, surrounded by legal documents that painted a picture of systemic abuse spanning 5 years. Each file told the same story, Karen Hendricks wielding HOA authority like a weapon, crushing anyone who dared question her reign. The Patterson family, forced to sell their home after Karen invented landscaping violations that would have cost $30,000 to fix. The elderly Kowalskis, harassed with noise complaints until they moved to assisted living. 12 families in total, all driven out by a woman who turned homeownership into psychological warfare. His phone had been ringing constantly since. Word spread about his inheritance. Each call revealed another layer of Karen's operation. She charges people for architectural consultations before approving any home improvements, explained Janet Morrison from Oak Street. Her husband's construction company gets the contracts. It's completely illegal, but who is going to stop her? She fined us $300 for leaving our garbage cans out 15 minutes past pickup, added Tom Reeves. When we fought it, she threatened to put a lien on our house. But the call that changed everything came at 2:47 p.m. Mr. Chen. This is Detective Sarah Walsh with the County Fraud Division. I understand you've inherited some property in Willowbrook Estates. Marcus sat up straighter. Yes. Is there a problem? Actually, you might be the solution to a problem we've been investigating for 2 years. Would you be available to meet this afternoon? Unofficially, of course. An hour later, Detective Walsh sat in Marcus's living room, reviewing documents. With the intensity of a hunter who'd finally cornered dangerous prey. We've been building a case against Karen Hendricks for HOA fraud, embezzlement, and intimidation, she said. The problem is jurisdiction and authority. She's careful to operate within gray areas of the law. What kind of gray areas? HOA boards have enormous power in this state. They can fine residents, place liens, even foreclose on properties. But that power comes with strict legal requirements about transparency, due process, and financial oversight. Detective Walsh pulled out her own file. Your friend Karen has been violating those requirements for years. Marcus leaned forward. What do you need from me? Access. As a property owner, you have limited rights to challenge HOA decisions. But as a master deed holder, she smiled grimly. You have the legal authority to demand full financial audits, review all board decisions, and access records that Karen has been hiding from residents. You want me to be bait? I want you to be exactly what your grandmother intended, the person with enough legal standing to finally hold Karen accountable. That evening, Marcus called an emergency meeting at his house. 23 neighbors showed up, filling his living room with years of suppressed anger and hope. Karen doesn't know about the master deed yet, Marcus explained. Which gives us an advantage. Tomorrow, I'm going to file formal requests for financial records, board meeting minutes, and contractor agreements going back 5 years. Patricia Walsh, the elderly woman from Elm Court, raised her hand. What if she refuses? She can't. It's legally required. And when she tries to stonewall or intimidate me like she has everyone else. Marcus held up a small recording device. Detective Walsh will have everything she needs. Robert Torres, the man whose business Karen had destroyed, shook his head. You don't understand what she's capable of. Karen doesn't just bend rules, she destroys people. Character assassination, false police reports, manufactured emergencies. She'll make your life hell. Let her try, Marcus said quietly. My grandmother spent 5 years documenting her methods. I know exactly what's coming. As the neighbors filed out, Marcus felt the weight of their expectations and fears. These people had been terrorized for years by a woman who'd turned their dream neighborhood into a prison of petty tyranny. At 11:30 p.m., Marcus was reviewing contractor files when his security system chimed. Someone was in his backyard. He grabbed a flashlight and stepped onto the deck. The pool area was empty, but something was wrong. The perfectly clear water now had an oily sheen, and there was a chemical smell in the air. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "Welcome to the neighborhood. Hope you enjoy your swim." Marcus called Detective Walsh immediately. "She's escalating," the detective said grimly. "Document everything, but don't touch the pool. I'll have a hazmat team out there first thing tomorrow." What did she put in it? Could be anything from industrial cleaning chemicals to raw sewage. Karen's used pool contamination before, it's hard to prove, creates health department violations, and gives her ammunition for more fines. Marcus stared out at the corrupted water. His grandmother's beloved pool, the centerpiece of her retirement happiness, turned into a weapon against him. But Karen had made a crucial mistake. The next morning, the hazmat team arrived to find not just chemical contamination, but something else: a small surveillance camera hidden in the pool equipment, still recording. Well, Detective Walsh said, reviewing the footage on her phone. "We've got Karen Hendricks, clear as day, dumping industrial degreaser into your pool at 11:15 p.m. Is that enough to arrest her?" "It's enough to get a warrant for her. House and financial records. Criminal mischief, environmental crimes, trespassing." She grinned. "Your grandmother was a smart woman. She positioned cameras all around this property." While the hazmat team worked, Marcus drove to the county courthouse and filed his formal requests for HOA records. The clerk, a middle-aged woman named Rose, looked at the documents with surprise. "Master deed holder rights," she murmured. "Haven't seen one of these in years. You know this gives you extraordinary authority over the HOA." "I'm learning that. Karen Hendricks isn't going to like this. She's been in here plenty of times, trying to use legal pressure to get her way with various residents." Rose leaned closer and lowered her voice. "Unofficially, that woman has made enemies throughout the county government. Building inspectors, zoning officials, even some judges. She's burned a lot of bridges with her arrogance." Marcus drove home to find Karen's silver BMW parked in his driveway, blocking his garage. She stood beside it with two men in expensive suits, clearly lawyers, and a third man with a clipboard who looked like a building inspector. "Mr. Chen," Karen's voice dripped false sweetness. "I'm here with city officials to conduct a mandatory safety inspection of your property. There have been reports of code violations." Marcus parked on the street and walked calmly toward the group. "Do you have a warrant?" One of the lawyers stepped forward. "Mr. Chen, I'm Richard Steinberg representing the Willowbrook Estates HOA. Under Section 6.3 of the Community Guidelines, the board has authority to inspect any property for safety violations." "Actually, you don't." Marcus pulled out his phone and called Detective Walsh. "Detective, they are here." Karen's confident smile faltered slightly. "Who's here?" "Police," Marcus said simply. Within minutes, 2 squad cars pulled up. Detective Walsh emerged from the first one, followed by officers Marcus didn't recognize. "Miss Hendricks," Detective Walsh said pleasantly. "We have a warrant for your arrest." The color drained from Karen's face. "On what charges?" "Criminal mischief, environmental crimes, trespassing, and conspiracy to commit fraud." "You have the right to remain silent." As the handcuffs clicked around Karen's wrists, her lawyers backed away like she'd suddenly become radioactive. The building inspector was already walking rapidly toward his car. "This is harassment," Karen screamed as she was loaded into the squad car. "I'll have your badges. I know people. I own this neighborhood." Detective Walsh turned to Marcus. "We'll need you to come in tomorrow to give a formal statement. But this is just the beginning. The warrant covers her house, her office, and all HOA financial records." Marcus nodded, watching as Karen's BMW was towed away. Neighbors had begun emerging from their houses, standing in yards and driveways, witnessing the moment their tormentor was finally brought down. But as the police cars drove away, Marcus noticed something that made his blood run cold. Karen was smiling. Even in handcuffs, even facing serious charges, she was smiling like a woman who held the ultimate trump card. Marcus pulled out his phone and called David Kim, his grandmother's attorney. "David, Karen just got arrested, but something's wrong." She looked confident. "Marcus, there's something I didn't tell you yesterday. Something your grandmother discovered just weeks before she died." "What?" "Karen doesn't just run the HOA in Willowbrook Estates. She's connected to a network of HOA presidents across the state. They share information, coordinate strategies, and most importantly, they have political connections at the state level." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What kind of connections?" "The kind that can make criminal charges disappear. The kind that can turn your master deed rights into worthless paper with a single legislative amendment." As if summoned by his words, Marcus's phone rang. Unknown number. "Mr. Chen. This is State Senator Patricia Blackwood's office. The senator would like to schedule a meeting with you at your earliest convenience regarding your recent illegal activities in Willowbrook Estates." Marcus hung up and stared at his house, his grandmother's house, the place that was supposed to be his sanctuary. Karen Hendricks wasn't just an HOA president. She was part of something much bigger, much more. The meeting with State Senator Patricia Blackwood took place in her downtown office, 30 floors above the city, in a glass tower that screamed political power. Marcus sat across from her massive desk, flanked by two aides who looked like they'd stepped out of a corporate law firm. Senator Blackwood was in her late 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of smile that politicians used when they were about to destroy you politely. "Mr. Chen, thank you for coming. I understand. You've recently inherited property in Willowbrook Estates." "Among other things," Marcus replied carefully. "Yes, among other things." Her smile never wavered. "You know, HOA governance is a complex issue in this state. We've been working on comprehensive reform legislation for the past 2 years." One of the aides slid a thick document across the desk. Marcus recognized legal language when he saw it, pages of amendments, subsections, and regulatory changes. "The Community Standards Modernization Act," Senator Blackwood continued. "It streamlines HOA operations, eliminates outdated ownership structures, and ensures that community governance serves all residents equally." Marcus flipped through the pages, his law school training helping him parse the dense language. What he found made his blood run cold. "This eliminates master deed authority," he said quietly. "It modernizes an antiquated system that gives disproportionate power to legacy landowners." Very democratic, don't you think? When does this go to vote? Emergency session next week. We have strong bipartisan support. Senator Blackwood leaned forward slightly. "Of course, there are always amendments, modifications. The legislative process is wonderfully flexible." The threat was clear as crystal. Support Karen's network, or watch his legal authority disappear with the stroke of a pen. "I see." Marcus closed the document. "And if I were to withdraw my complaints against Ms. Hendricks? I'm sure the district attorney would be open to discussing plea arrangements. Community service, perhaps. A chance for everyone to move forward constructively." Marcus stood up. "Senator, with all due respect, you can take your legislation and..." "Mr. Chen." Her voice cut through his anger like ice. "You're a young man with your whole life ahead of you. Don't make enemies you can't afford to have." Outside the senator's office, Marcus called Detective Walsh immediately. "They are going to kill the case and strip my legal authority," he said, pacing the sidewalk as downtown traffic roared around him. "Not if we move fast enough," Walsh replied. "Meet me at the courthouse in an hour. And bring everything your grandmother left you." "Everything." The courthouse was buzzing with activity when Marcus arrived. Detective Walsh was waiting with 3 people he didn't recognize: a stern-faced woman in a federal suit, an older man with FBI credentials, and a younger woman carrying recording equipment. "Marcus, meet Agent Jennifer Torres from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit, Assistant U.S. Attorney Michael Harrison, and investigative journalist Lisa Park from the Tribune." Agent Torres stepped forward. Mr. Chen, what you've stumbled into isn't just local corruption. It's a statewide network of HOA fraud, political kickbacks, and organized intimidation. How many people are involved? We are tracking 47 HOA presidents across 12 counties, all connected through a consulting company called Community Standard Solutions. They share tactics, coordinate political influence, and most importantly, they launder money through fraudulent fines and contractor kickbacks. Assistant U.S. Attorney Harrison pulled out his own files. Conservative estimate: they've stolen over $20 million from homeowners in the last 5 years. Your friend Karen was just one piece of a much larger operation. Lisa Park, the journalist, leaned forward. And Senator Blackwood has received over $300,000 in campaign contributions from companies connected to this network. Her legislation isn't about modernization, it's about protecting their operation by eliminating oversight. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together. They're using HOAs as organized crime fronts. Exactly. And your grandmother's documentation is the missing piece we needed to prove it. Detective Walsh smiled grimly. Lily Chen wasn't just fighting Karen Hendricks. She was building a federal case. What do you need me to do? Agent Torres exchanged glances with the prosecutor. We need you to go back to Willowbrook Estates and act normal. Karen's out on bail and she's going to be desperate to contain the damage. We need her to make contact with her handlers. You want me to be bait again? We want you to be the catalyst that brings down the entire network. That afternoon, Marcus returned home to find chaos. News vans lined the street, reporters shouting questions at anyone who emerged from their houses. Karen's mansion was surrounded by crime scene tape, with FBI agents carrying boxes of evidence to waiting trucks. But Karen herself was nowhere to be seen. Marcus pushed through the crowd of reporters and made it to his front door, where he found Patricia Walsh from Elm Court waiting on his porch. Marcus, thank God you're home. Karen's been calling residents all morning, telling them you're working with federal agents to destroy the neighborhood. What's the reaction? Patricia's face was grim. Mixed. Some people are terrified, they think property values will collapse if this becomes a federal case. Others are celebrating that someone finally stood up to her. Inside the house, Marcus found his answering machine blinking with dozens of messages. He played them back, documenting each one as Detective Walsh had instructed. The first few were supportive neighbors. Then the tone shifted. You have no idea what you've done, a man's voice said. Karen protected this neighborhood from people like you. You've destroyed everything we built here. Federal agents in our community because of your family drama, a woman hissed. We know where you live. But the last message made Marcus's blood freeze. Mr. Chen, this is Governor Hartwell's office. The governor would like to invite you to dinner tomorrow evening. 7 o'clock at the executive mansion. This is not optional. Marcus stared at the machine. The governor of the state wanted to have dinner with him. This conspiracy went higher than anyone had imagined. His phone rang. Detective Walsh. Marcus, get out of the house now. We just intercepted communications suggesting Karen's people are planning something tonight. What kind of something? The kind that involves gasoline and matches. Pack a bag. And meet me at the safe house address I'm texting you. Marcus was throwing clothes into a duffel bag when he heard the sound, footsteps on his deck, multiple people moving carefully around the pool area. He killed the lights and peered through the bedroom curtains. 3 figures in dark clothing were setting up what looked like photography equipment around the contaminated pool. But they weren't taking pictures. They were staging a scene. Marcus called 911, whispering into the phone as he watched the figures pour liquid around the pool deck. The chemical smell hit him immediately, gasoline. 911, what's your emergency? This is Marcus Chen at 847 Maple Ridge Drive. There are people in my backyard with gasoline and I think they are going to. The explosion lit up the night sky. Marcus was thrown backward as his bedroom windows blew out. Smoke and flames filled the air and he could hear shouting from the street. But as he stumbled toward the stairs, coughing and choking on smoke, he realized something that changed everything. The explosion hadn't come from his pool. It had come from Karen's house. Through the smoke and chaos, Marcus saw fire trucks screaming down the street, not toward his property, but toward the mansion across the way. Karen's house was engulfed in flames, and he could see FBI agents evacuating boxes of evidence from the surrounding area. The figures in his backyard had vanished. Marcus made it outside to find Detective Walsh pulling up in an unmarked car, her face grim in the light of the burning mansion. "Is she dead?" Marcus asked. "We don't know. Karen wasn't in the house when it went up. But this changes everything." Walsh looked at the flames consuming what had been the symbol of Karen's power in the neighborhood. "Someone just destroyed 20 years' worth of evidence. The same someone who tried to frame me for arson. The same someone who's been pulling Karen's strings from the beginning." Walsh's radio crackled with urgent voices. "Marcus, that dinner with the governor tomorrow. You're still going. Are you insane? You're going because we just figured out who's really running this operation." She turned to face him, her expression deadly serious. "And it's not Karen Hendricks. She's just middle management." As fire trucks battled the blaze consuming Karen's mansion, Marcus realized that everything he thought he knew about this conspiracy was wrong. Karen hadn't been the mastermind. She'd been the fall guy all along. And whoever was really in charge had just tried to eliminate both of them in one carefully orchestrated night of destruction. The executive mansion sat like a fortress on 20 acres of manicured grounds, its white columns gleaming under security floodlights. Marcus adjusted his tie as the unmarked FBI van dropped him at the main gate, the wire taped to his chest, feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Remember," Agent Torres's voice crackled through his nearly invisible earpiece, "we need him to incriminate himself. Get him talking about the HOA network, the legislation, anything that connects him to the conspiracy." Governor Richard Hartwell met Marcus in the mansion's oak-paneled study, a room that screamed old money and older power. He was younger than Marcus had expected, maybe 55, with silver temples and the kind of confident handshake that politicians spent years perfecting. "Marcus, thank you for coming. Please, sit. Can I offer you a drink?" "Just water, thanks." Marcus settled into a leather chair that probably cost more than most people's cars. "Terrible business with the fire last night," Hartwell said, pouring himself 3 fingers of bourbon. "I understand you lost some property as well." "Just some windows. Karen's house took the real damage." Yes, Ms. Hendricks." Hartwell's expression grew thoughtful. "A dedicated public servant, but perhaps a bit overzealous in her community leadership. That's one way to put it. You know, Marcus, I've been following your situation with great interest. Your grandmother was quite a remarkable woman. Brilliant legal mind." Marcus felt a chill. "You knew her?" "Oh yes. Lily Chen and I crossed paths many times over the years. She had very strong opinions about property rights, community governance, the role of government in local affairs." Hartwell swirled his bourbon. "Sometimes we agreed. Sometimes we didn't." "What did you disagree about?" Hartwell smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Lily believed that individual property rights should supersede community standards. I believe that strong communities require strong leadership, clear rules, and the authority to enforce them." Through his earpiece, Marcus heard Agent Torres whisper, "Keep him talking about the HOAs. Like HOA leadership. Exactly like HOA leadership. Do you know how many residential communities in this state are governed by homeowners associations, Marcus?" "I have no idea." "Over 2,000. Representing nearly 40% of all residential property. That's a lot of people, a lot of money, and a tremendous amount of civic responsibility." Hartwell stood and walked to the window. "When that system works well, communities thrive. Property values increase, quality of life improves, civic engagement strengthens. And when it doesn't work well, chaos. Property disputes, declining values, neighborhood conflicts that tear communities apart." Hartwell turned back to Marcus. That's why strong leadership is so essential. People like Karen Hendricks who understand that sometimes individual desires must be subordinated to community needs. Marcus felt the wire against his chest like a brand. Even when that leadership becomes corrupt. Hartwell's smile faltered for just a moment. Corruption is a strong word, Marcus. What some people call corruption, others might call necessary. Compromise. What would you call $20 million in fraudulent fines and kickbacks? The silence stretched between them like a live wire. Hartwell set down his bourbon and moved closer to Marcus's chair. I think there's been a misunderstanding about the nature of your situation. What kind of misunderstanding? You seem to believe that your grandmother's legal documents give you some kind of authority over HOA operations. But laws change. Marcus. Property rights evolve. The Community Standards Modernization Act will be signed into law within the week. And that eliminates master deed authority. It modernizes an outdated system. Brings community governance into the 21st century. Hartwell's voice was growing harder. It also happens to eliminate the legal standing that federal prosecutors would need to pursue certain types of cases. Marcus's blood ran cold. You're killing the investigation. I'm protecting 2,000 communities from legal chaos that would serve no one's interests. Through his earpiece, we've got enough. Get out of there. But Marcus couldn't move. The sheer audacity of what he was hearing had paralyzed him. You've been running the whole thing, he said quietly. The HOA network, the political protection. The legislation. Karen was just your enforcer. Hartwell returned to his chair, his political mask slipping to reveal something much more dangerous underneath. Karen Hendricks was a useful tool who outlived her usefulness. She got sloppy, attracted attention, let personal vendettas override operational security. He picked up his bourbon again. Frankly, last night's fire was overdue. You tried to kill her. I eliminated a liability. Just as I'm about to eliminate another one. The study door opened and two men in dark suits entered. Not security guards, something much worse. One of them moved to block the door while the other pulled out a small device that looked like a signal jammer. I'm afraid your federal friends won't be hearing the rest of our conversation, Hartwell said calmly. You see, Marcus, you've created a rather significant problem for me. Your grandmother's documentation, combined with your legal authority, threatens an operation that generates over $50 million annually for very important people. Marcus felt for his phone, but the jammer had killed all signals. Important people like Senator Blackwood. Patricia is a junior partner. This network extends far beyond one state, far beyond HOAs. We've created a model for organized community control that's being replicated across the country. Hartwell finished his bourbon. Property management companies, municipal contracts, state legislation, it's a beautifully integrated system. And anyone who threatens it disappears. Accidents happen, Marcus. House fires, car crashes, sudden heart attacks. Your grandmother understood the stakes better than you do. That's why she was so careful to keep her head down those last few years. Until she decided to fight back. Until she made the mistake of thinking she could win. Hartwell stood up. But her real mistake was trusting her grandson to be smarter than she was. One of the men moved toward Marcus, and that's when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing the room in red glare. Through the mansion's windows, Marcus could see vehicles surrounding the building, FBI, ATF, and what looked like half the state police. Federal agents. The voice boomed through bullhorns. The building is surrounded. Hartwell's composure cracked. How is that possible? The jammer killed my wire, Marcus said, standing up slowly. But it didn't kill the transmitter. In your bourbon decanter. Hartwell spun around to stare at the cut crystal decanter on his bar cart. Agent Torres had been in the mansion for hours, posing as catering staff. You see, Governor, my grandmother taught me something important about dealing with bullies. Marcus smiled for the first time all evening. Always have a backup plan. The study doors exploded inward as FBI agents flooded the room. Hartwell's men were on the ground in seconds, while the governor himself stood frozen behind his desk, finally understanding that his empire was collapsing around him. Richard Hartwell, Agent Torres announced, "You're under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, money laundering, and accessory to attempted murder." As the handcuffs clicked around the governor's wrists, Marcus felt a weight lifting from his shoulders that he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. But Agent Torres wasn't smiling. "Marcus, we've got a problem. Karen Hendricks wasn't in that house fire by accident. She escaped." "Where is she?" "We don't know. But she called the FBI field office 20 minutes ago. She wants to make a deal." Marcus stared out the mansion windows at the army of federal agents securing the scene. Hartwell's network was finished, the conspiracy was exposed, and justice was finally being served. But somewhere out in the darkness, Karen Hendricks was still free.